Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night wondering what would happen if something unexpected came up? Not just to you, but to your family, your home, your hard-earned savings. Maybe it starts with a little worry, like, what if I get sick and can't make decisions for myself? Or maybe someone you know recently passed and their family is now caught in a long, expensive court battle because nothing was written down. It's a scary thought, but you're not alone. So many people our age are thinking the same thing. How do I make sure everything is taken care of when I'm gone, or if I can't make choices myself anymore? That's where estate planning comes in. Now, don't let that term scare you off. It sounds fancy, maybe even like something only rich people do, but the truth is, estate planning is for everyone. Whether you've got a big house and investments, or just a modest savings account and a life you've built with love, what matters is making sure your wishes are respected. It's about protecting your legacy, your loved ones, and your peace of mind. In this video, we're going to talk about something incredibly important but often overlooked: how to prepare a simple, smart plan for what happens next. We'll go over the basics like wills and trusts, explain what power of attorney actually means, and how to avoid those long, stressful court processes like probate. Don't worry, I'll keep it simple. No legal mumbo-jumbo, just the real stuff you need to know. So let's start with something most people have heard of but aren't always sure about: the will. A will is a legal document that says who gets what when you're gone. Sounds simple, right? But you'd be surprised how many people put it off or assume they don't need one. Maybe you think, oh, my kids will work it out, or I don't have much to leave behind. But without a will, the government decides who gets your belongings, not you. And that process can take months, even years, with court fees and arguments that nobody wants to deal with in a time of grief. Even something as small as your grandmother's wedding ring or your favorite recliner can cause disagreements. I've seen it happen. Families torn apart because no one wrote down who gets what. A will helps avoid that. It gives your loved ones clear instructions, removes the guesswork, and saves them from stress when they should be focusing on healing. Now, writing a will isn't about being gloomy. It's about being thoughtful. It's saying, I love you, and I want this to be easier for you. You can write one with a lawyer, or even use an online service if your situation is pretty straightforward. Just make sure it's signed, witnessed, and stored somewhere safe where someone you trust can find it. And don't forget to update it every so often. If someone in the family is born, passes, gets married, or your finances change, your will should reflect that. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. A will is just the beginning. Many people choose to also set up something called a trust. Now, I know, that word makes people's eyes glaze over, but stay with me for a second. A trust can help your family avoid something called probate, which is that long, expensive court process I mentioned earlier. A trust puts your assets, like your home or your bank accounts, into a separate legal container, and you get to decide who manages that container and who receives what and when. Let's say you have a home and you want it to go to your daughter. If it's in a trust, it passes directly to her without waiting for court approval. That means faster access, fewer fees, and way less drama. It can even help reduce estate taxes in some cases, which is just a fancy way of saying your family gets to keep more of what you've worked for instead of handing a chunk of it over to the government. And trusts aren't just for after you're gone. Some people use them to manage their money while they're alive, especially if they think they may need help down the road. You stay in control, but you've got backup in place. And that brings me to another key piece of the puzzle: power of attorney. Imagine something happens, a fall, an illness, and suddenly you're in the hospital, unable to speak or make decisions. Who pays your bills? Who talks to your doctor? That's where power of attorney comes in. It's a document where you choose someone, a spouse, a child, a trusted friend, to act on your behalf if you can't. There are different types, like medical power of attorney for healthcare decisions and financial power of attorney for money matters. And having both can make a huge difference, saving your family from scrambling and second-guessing in the middle of a crisis. Now, this might all feel like a lot. Wills, trusts, power of attorney. It can sound overwhelming at first, but take a breath. You don't need to figure everything out overnight. Just knowing where to start puts you ahead of the game. And starting now, even with small steps, gives you something priceless: control. And here's where a living trust comes into play. Think of a trust like a safe deposit box. You decide what goes in, who holds the key, and who gets to open it once you're no longer around.
Unlike a will, a living trust doesn't need to go through probate. That means your loved ones could avoid the long wait and high fees that often come with court proceedings. It also keeps your affairs more private, since trusts don't become public record the way wills often do. If privacy and efficiency are important to you, this might be worth looking into. Now, creating a trust isn't just about avoiding probate. It can also give you more control over how and when your assets are distributed. For example, if you want your grandchildren to receive money only when they reach a certain age or finish college, a trust lets you set those terms. That way, your legacy supports their growth without overwhelming them. But setting up a trust isn't a one-size-fits-all process. You'll want to work with someone who truly understands your values, your financial picture, and your long-term goals. A qualified estate planning attorney can help craft the documents in a way that fits you, not just a generic template off the internet. And while you can expect to pay a bit more for a trust than for a will, many people feel the peace of mind is worth it. Now let's talk about something that's just as essential, maybe even more so, and that's assigning a power of attorney. Imagine you're in a situation where you can't make decisions for yourself, even temporarily. Who would you trust to step in and speak on your behalf? That's exactly what a power of attorney does. You're choosing someone, a spouse, a child, a trusted friend, to make legal and financial decisions if you ever become unable to do so. This isn't giving up control. It's taking control now, while you're healthy and clear-minded, to prepare for any unexpected bumps in the road later. There are two common types, one for finances and one for healthcare. The financial power of attorney allows your chosen person to pay your bills, manage your investments, or even handle property if needed. The healthcare power of attorney, sometimes called a healthcare proxy, gives them the authority to make medical decisions based on your wishes if you can't speak for yourself. Think of these as your voice when you can't use yours. Without these documents, even your closest family members might struggle to get the permissions they need to help you in a crisis. And the last thing anyone wants in an emergency is confusion, delays, or court battles. With powers of attorney in place, everyone knows who's in charge and what your wishes are. It can feel uncomfortable to think about these scenarios. No one likes to imagine being sick or incapacitated. But here's the truth. Being proactive now means fewer worries later. Not just for you, but for the people who care about you. It's one of the most loving things you can do. And while you're at it, this is also the perfect time to consider something called an Advance Healthcare Directive. This is where you spell out your preferences for end-of-life care, things like resuscitation, life support, and pain management. It's your opportunity to clearly express your choices so your family isn't left guessing or carrying the emotional burden of making those decisions alone. All of this might sound like a lot to think about, but here's the good news. You don't have to do it all at once. You just need to take the first step. Maybe that means having a conversation with your spouse or children about what matters most to you. Maybe it's reaching out to a professional for guidance. Either way, every bit of progress you make brings more clarity, more comfort, and more peace of mind. It's not about having millions in the bank or dozens of properties. Estate planning is about honoring the life you've built and making sure it's passed on the way you intend, with care, with dignity, and with love. Now, while we've covered the basics, wills, trusts, and powers of attorney, there's one more layer that ties everything together: keeping your documents updated. Life doesn't stand still, and neither should your estate plan. Over the years, relationships can shift, assets change, and laws evolve. That's why reviewing your plan every few years or after major life events is one of the smartest things you can do. Think about it this way. Maybe you created a will 10 years ago when your kids were just starting out in life. But now they have families of their own. Maybe you've sold a house, bought a second home, or downsized. Or perhaps someone named in your documents has passed away or is no longer someone you trust in that role. These things happen, and that's okay. What's important is keeping your plan as current and accurate as your life itself. Another essential step many people overlook is communicating your plans. It's not always easy to talk about money or what will happen after we're gone, but having open, honest conversations now can prevent misunderstandings or hurt feelings later. Let your loved ones know where your documents are stored, who's responsible for what, and what your wishes are. It doesn't need to be dramatic, just clear. Sometimes these discussions bring families even closer together. They become a moment to reflect, to share values, and to express love. And if there are any questions or concerns, you can address them together, now, when it's still possible to clarify and reassure. And don't forget the digital side of life either. These days, more and more of us have online accounts. Banking, email, social media, even photos and important documents stored in the cloud. You might want to leave clear instructions about how to access or handle those accounts. Some people keep a list of passwords in a secure place. Others use a digital password manager and share access with a trusted person. Whatever method you choose, just make sure someone you trust knows how to find it when the time comes. Now, let's pause here for a moment because this next point is important. Estate planning isn't a one-size-fits-all process. What works for your neighbor or your cousin might not be right for you. That's why it's so important to sit down with a professional, an estate planning attorney or financial advisor.